So my name is Lindsey Cuen. I grew up in Los Angeles area, and now I live here in Eger. I've lived here almost 4 years. Magyarul most egy kicsit beszélek, de nem folyékonyan. So I speak some Hungarian, but not fluently. So I will be speaking in English, but because I am from Los Angeles, I tend to talk fast. So if you feel that it is too fast, please let me know, because I would like you to understand what I'm saying. Or you can just look at me like this, and I'll understand, okay? This is by no means an extensive study on the holidays of Halloween and Thanksgiving. This is very straightforward and more about how we celebrate in America. And so I won't go into a lot of detail about history and things like that, but more about what we do to celebrate the holidays. And I'll have a lot of pictures, and hopefully it will be fun. So as I said, I'm from America, and I tend to be more relaxed. So if you have any questions, just raise your hand and ask, and I will answer whatever I can, or we can talk at the end, okay? I'll start with Halloween. And I'll be honest, it's not my favorite holiday, but it's very uniquely American in the sense that it seems that it's mostly celebrated in America and not a whole lot of other places. And so I'm going to go into the details of how it's celebrated, and I think you'll find that there are some differences than you might expect. I often talk with a lot of my English students, and they are usually surprised about how we celebrate. I don't think I mentioned, though, that I do teach here in the university. I work with the Nemzetközi Kapcsolat department, and I teach English to those who work here at the university so that they can bravely be able to speak English. So just to give you an idea. Okay, so Halloween as we celebrate in the US. Now, some basics. The October 31st through November 2nd is called All Hallow Tide. Nobody really celebrates that in America as a whole, that time period, but more specifically the 31st. But to give a bit of a background on Halloween, it's this word, All Hallow Tide, is derived from two words. In Old English, the word hálig, which is about the saints. It means saints, or those who've passed away. And the word tide, which refers to a time or a season. And it's a time that is spent remembering those who've passed on, both saints in the common use of the word, of people who were considered holy or godly, and just family members and regular people who've passed on. On October 31st, we celebrate All Hallows Eve, which is where the word Halloween came from. And that's really the most that is celebrated in America. We don't celebrate All Saints' Day, actually. So November 1st is not commonly celebrated in America. But I did live in the Philippines, and my family is from Mexico a long time ago. And the Mexican culture, the Latin culture in general, and the Filipino culture, so general Catholic cultures, celebrate All Saints' Day, like here. And you know plenty about that, more than I could say about that. So on November 1st is All Saints' Day, the day to remember the dead. And I've seen that it differs a lot from cultures. So I lived in the Philippines for a little while, and in the Philippines, it's a very happy holiday, November 1st, which I know is very different than here in Hungary. People go to the cemetery, and it's like there's a huge festival at the cemetery. You can buy food, you can get henna tattoos, you can buy balloons, and they just gather with their families, and they have a big party at the cemetery. So it's a very happy holiday in the Philippines. But here it's a little bit more somber, a day of remembrance, right? So it can be very different based on the culture. Mexican culture is also very happy. The All Saints' Day is a very happy time. It's colorful, and it's very celebratory. And so in America on Halloween, we have trick-or-treating. I'll go into more detail about that later. And many people dress in costumes. It is not uncommon in America on October 31st to see adults walking down the street dressed like a clown or in, wedding gear, like dressed as a bride, or to see monsters walking on the street in October. It's very common. And we celebrate with parties and haunted houses. We'll talk more about that. A bit about the roots of the holiday. There's two sides, the pagan side and the Christian side. So the Celtic New Year is October 31st. That's when it begins. And that's the end of summer. It's when they believed at the time that the dead would come alive. And so they would cook and bake for them to be hospitable. And in the evening, they dressed up to resemble those who passed on. And there is some superstition that they did it to protect themselves. So they would dress up so that as the ghosts came by them, they would not know that they're living people. They would think that they're ghosts. And so they also had a lot of pagan rituals that happened that night. And still in the United States today, a lot of witchcraft and things like that happen this night. There's a connection to the history of it. And then on the Christian side, it later became Christianized. And it originally, this was new information for me as I studied it, is that it originally came from Ireland. So it seems that it became very popular and was a child's holiday at the time. And then it spread when the Irish immigrants came to the United States. And it was in the 1840s, as you can see, and it became sort of Christianized. They made it sort of a nice holiday, similar to Christmas, if you're familiar with the history. Now, let's talk about who and how it is celebrated. In America, I think most people think that it's just children who celebrate Halloween, but actually, adults get very into Halloween. It's very popular. And my workplace, I used to work in an office, and we would celebrate Halloween. Everyone would get dressed up. So you'd go to work dressed like a zombie or a monster or whatever. And they would also invite their kids to come trick-or-treating at their desks in our office. And when I was a child, I have a lot of memories of Halloween. And we would go to school and get dressed up, and we would have a parade in the school. So we would start at one classroom, and we would walk through every classroom so they could see our costumes. And then as we finished the classroom, that class would get up and join the line, and we would continually become a larger and larger line as we walked through all the classrooms so everyone could see everyone's costumes. So it was a big parade, and it was a really fun time, I remember. Haunted houses, if you're familiar with haunted houses, it's when they take a space, usually a house, but not always, and they, decorate it and they put all these scary things. And there is a lot of effort that is put into this. And I don't like them. So I don't go to them. But it is really, really scary. And they have like dead brides and graveyards and all these things there. So it's actually very scary and not my favorite. And in the workplace, as I mentioned, it's common, and then the kids in the evening go trick-or-treating. So trick-or-treating, I'm sure you know, but basically it means that they go to somebody's house, and nowadays they don't do this, but they used to say a little poem. So they'd have a poem. I'll show you one a little later. And they would say, basically, trick or treat. So give me something sweet, something good to eat, or I'll do a trick on you. And it was kind of like a little gonos, like little evil, sneaky little type of holiday. And it's less common that people do things, but a lot of bad things do happen on those nights because teenagers will be teenagers. Colors and symbols that are associated with Halloween, obviously black and orange. Also common is green and purple. Those are kind of the 4 Halloween colors that you see in everything. It's a very commercialized holiday in America, so they sell everything Halloween related. And the jack-o'-lantern, so if you're familiar, in the bottom corner there is a jack-o'-lantern, and it's when they take a pumpkin, the big round kind, and they cut faces into it, like scary faces or different pictures. And then they stick a candle inside so the face shines through. And there's a whole story of that history, so I'll read it to you. But basically, it's Irish legend, and they believe that Jack's soul was doomed to wander the earth. And so he put a candle inside a turnip or an orange squash pumpkin, and that's how the jack-o'-lantern came to be. It's also common symbols are evil spirits, witches, skeletons, goblins, monsters, and things like that. But children in general like to dress up. So, you'll see little brides or princesses or, fairies. It's not all scary, dark things. There's also some nice things. So the jack-o'-lantern. So I'll read this because I don't know this by heart, but it's an Irish Christian folktale. And it says, en route home after a night's drinking, Jack encounters the devil. So he meets the devil, and he tricks him into climbing a tree. But Jack, being smart, quick thinking, he etches a sign of the cross into the bark. And the devil was trapped in the bark, in the tree. So he couldn't get out because of the cross. And he strikes a bargain, or he makes a deal with the devil. And he says, if you promise, basically, he says, if you promise to not let me never take my soul, then I will let you free. And so that Satan can never claim his soul. And after a life of sin, drinking, and mendacity, which is just a fancy word for lying, Jack is refused entry into heaven when he dies. So he can't go to heaven, and the devil can't take him into hell. So the devil kept his promise, and he just had to roam the earth, basically. And so it says that the devil refused to let Jack into hell, and he threw a live coal straight from the fires of hell at him. It was a cold night, so Jack took the coal and he put it inside of a pumpkin or a turnip to stop it from going out. And since that time, Jack and his lantern have been roaming, looking for a place to rest. So that's where the jack-o'-lantern comes from. They just believed that he roams the earth with this pumpkin and a candle inside, or a coal. So I wanted to show some pictures of common costumes because it's actually very detailed. Like whole families will dress up and get one theme, and they really get into it. This is a baby, and he's dressed like a biker. He's a biker baby. And so people will dress their children up. They'll dress up as teams. Here's the superheroes, right? And the Avengers, Aladdin and Jasmine. And this is a bunch of people dressed as they're little soldiers. When you're a child, you play with those. Tons of kids' costumes and family costumes, the Incredibles. So during this time of year, September, October, they actually have stores that will pop up just for Halloween. And so they open huge stores, bigger than this room, big stores, and they sell tons of costumes. So it's also very commercial, of course, but you can find lots of detailed costumes there. And then they go away and they come back next year in a different location. So this is my mother. This is what she wore to work this year for Halloween. Her company, did a collective group costume, and they all dressed up as scary clowns. And so this is her office. As you walk in, they decorated it with this terrifying clown head, and then they all dressed up as scary clowns and went to work together. And these are her coworkers, so the different people that she works with. So as you can see, it's not like my mom is crazy, although she kind of is. But this is generally common in America to go to work on Halloween in full costume. And so people come, and you can see people like this walking down the street, even though, Americans don't walk that much. So, but these are her coworkers. Some more of her coworkers. This guy, he's from a movie I think you guys have seen. And so trick-or-treating, like I mentioned, it's the goal of it, the point of it is to collect candies And so during this time, people will walk up and down their neighborhoods because it's a little different here than it is in America. The houses are relatively close, and we don't have a lot of, at least where I lived, we don't have a lot of tall buildings where people live. We mostly have family houses, and they're really close. So you walk down the street and you just hit every house. And you ring the doorbell, and then you go trick or treat, and you hold out your bag or your basket, and then they fill it with candy. They just give you candy. And so you have to be careful. But here's a little poem they used to say. It's trick or treat, smell my feet, give me something good to eat. If you don't, I won't be sad, I'll just make you wish you had. So it shows the theme of it. It's either you give me something good or I'm gonna make you regret it, basically. But kids don't really do tricks on people. Mostly teenagers do. And it is a time when a lot of bad things happen. And so here's a few things that teenagers do on that night, or other people. If you look here, this picture, it's called toilet papering a house. If you've never heard of this, it's common for teenagers in America, but more common at Halloween. They take rolls of toilet paper and they just cover the house and the trees and everything with toilet paper, which you'd think wouldn't be that big of a deal, but after it sits there all night, it's really hard to pick up in the morning because it gets wet and then it's like stuck there and it's a mess. They also soap windscreens, so they put soap on the windshield or windscreens of houses and cars. They egg houses, so they throw eggs at people's houses. When I was a teenager, I remember somebody bleached our front yard, so they poured bleach on our grass and they killed our tree and all the grass. So these things are relatively common, and they throw garbage cans, things like that. This is a common Halloween candy in the United States. It's called candy corn, and it's delicious. I love it. But yeah, just some kids coming around. They go to the houses, and everyone gets to see the costumes. It's kind of a cute time, too. There are often parties at Halloween time that are Halloween themed, and they have games specifically made for Halloween. So bobbing for apples is common because it's a time of harvest. There's also that connection to Halloween. And so they do bobbing for apples, which means that they have to pick up an apple with their mouths, not using their hands, in a big tub full of water. And they have like a scavenger hunt, a witch hunt scavenger hunt. This is the mummy wrap. So they wrap you in toilet paper and see who can be the best mummy. There's a contest like that. I don't know if you guys play this here, but this is pin the tail on the donkey, but at Halloween it becomes pin the tail on the devil. And so they have a game where they have to, blindfolded, they have to find the tail of a devil and put it on. Pass the organ. It's similar to hot potato, if you're familiar with that, where you pass something around in a circle, and whoever it ends on, when the music stops, they're out. But you pass an organ, like a heart or a liver or something. It's not real. And name the yuck. So yuck is a word for like undorito or goose. It's like when something's gross. The word yuck, it's like ew. And you have to, oftentimes they'll do this, where they have a little box and you open the box and there's something gross inside, or a bag, and you have to just feel and try and figure out what it is. So it could be like spaghetti, cold spaghetti, and you have to figure out what it is, or things like that, just gross stuff. Anything gross is Halloween related, usually. And then truth or dare. I don't know if that's played here, but truth or dare is usually when you sit in a circle with your friends, and somebody goes and they say, truth or dare, and then you have to choose one. So if you say truth, they ask you a question and you have to be honest and tell the truth. Or if you choose dare, you have to go do something crazy, like, I don't know, run up to the neighbor's house and ring the doorbell and yell at them, or just crazy, silly things. So it's a lot of mischief this time of year. Some other common pictures that are connected to Halloween. There's a lot of superstitions that are connected to Halloween. And so the black cat is common. They believe that if a black cat crosses your path, goes in front of you, it's bad luck, and you'll have bad luck for a long time. And, you know, there's a lot of things that happen at cemeteries on this night, and of course, witchcraft and things like that, potions, spiders, bats, these are all common. But it's not all scary. Some of it's happy, too, like princesses and fairies and things like that. In general, there's not a lot of connection to the way that it's celebrated in America today and the dark origins. Mostly today, it's just a time to dress up and eat candy and have fun. Similar to Farshang, if you guys have that. So, okay. So, Thanksgiving. This is my favorite. I love Thanksgiving. I love this time of year. And this holiday is more harvest related. So the time of year where all of the crops are being harvested. So it's a big collective celebration with your family. Some of the basics. Thanksgiving in the US is on the 4th Thursday in November. So it was last Thursday. And actually, I didn't know, but it's celebrated in Canada, and it's on the 2nd Monday in October in Canada. So it's a little early. And Thanksgiving, as an American, I'm not sure about the Canadian side, but as an American, it's a time of gratitude or thanks to God and to the Indians. The first winter here, so when they first, not here, sorry, in America. So when they first came to America, it was a very unsettled land, and they had to learn how to live in this land and how to grow crops and what works on the land, and they had to make homes and start completely over. So imagine, you don't have grocery stores or supermarkets, you don't have a home, you don't even have people who are already, you know, established on what works in the land. So, except for the Native Americans. Actually, my origin is, I have some Native American in my family. It's a bit of a controversial holiday, and I won't go into the details of that because I just don't think it's worth thinking about. But they say that a lot of the history can be very dark because the land was essentially taken from the Native Americans. But the school version of Thanksgiving is that it's celebrated together with the Native Americans. And it's a time of thankfulness for survival. And they teach in school, so I'm just saying that as a, you know, that's what they teach in school, is that the Native Americans helped them to plant crops and to settle and to find their home in the state, or in the United States. And so together, they teach in school, that the pilgrims who first came to America sat down with the Native Americans, and they had a big meal of thankfulness after the harvest. The first winter was very hard, and a lot of people died, and they didn't really make it through. And so a lot of it, too, was just thankfulness that they were still alive. They were just happy. This is corn and maize. So this is different crops that were common during that time that the Native Americans would eat themselves, and then they shared with the new American settlers. In the United States today, it's a commonly celebrated time of family reunion. It's also the biggest and busiest flight time in America. People spend hundreds of dollars to travel, and it's a nightmare to fly this time of year in America. So if you can avoid it, don't go then. So some of the history. The celebration of thanks is for the harvest time and the success of another year staying alive. And in November 1789, on November 26th, President George Washington declared the first nationwide Thanksgiving celebration. So it was the official first celebration nationwide. And it was a day of public thanksgiving and prayer to God. And it's like the one time of year in America where it's socially acceptable to pray publicly, because it's becoming very uncommon in America. It was a celebration after the first few years of colonization, and so they sat down together, as you can see here, and had a large meal, and they shared what they were thankful for with the colonists and the natives. So together, it was also a time of unity. I wanted to show some of the original clothing of what the Pilgrims used to wear, because it's very different than today. And so I can't even read some of these words, so I'm just going to let you look at that, because it's very different. But even today, some people dress up as pilgrims. And they come and will do presentations in school, or will come to parties. And it's just a bit of a celebrated time of sort of the beginning of the United States. Now, a typical Thanksgiving meal includes most of these things, if not all. So turkey, usually we cook a whole turkey. I love Thanksgiving. I always host a Thanksgiving dinner at my house, and it's always a pain to find a turkey here. I could never find a turkey. If anybody knows, let me know. So this year, actually what we did is we took turkey breast and turkey legs and fascitum, thigh, or whatever this race area is, and we put it all together and we just cooked it that way. But it's usually a very spiced, flavored turkey. It's very delicious, hopefully. And this part right here, inside the turkey, is called stuffing. I don't usually cook the turkey, the stuffing inside the turkey, but you can, and it helps with the flavoring of the turkey. And then with it, we have brown gravy, or what is like a sauce. Oftentimes the turkey can be dry, so it helps with that. And the gravy or the sauce comes from the liquids of the turkey. So after it's cooked, you take the liquid from the turkey, and then you add flour and sort of thicken it up, and that is brown gravy. It's really simple. And then cranberry sauce here is commonly served with the meal. It's very sweet and tart and flavorful, but it mixes well with the meat and the other sides. Mashed potatoes, everybody knows. Bread rolls, stuffing. Corn is very common. Green bean casserole, so like a rakot green bean casserole type thing. So it's like cooked inside, it's like green beans that are cooked inside the oven with some other sauces with it, and usually bacon. We love bacon. And then pumpkin pie, it's my favorite. I love pumpkin pie. So that's common, and we serve it with whipped cream. And apple pie, very traditional American. And then sweet potatoes. This is probably the most interesting part for at least Hungarians. Usually we take sweet potatoes and we cut them up, and then we put brown sugar and cinnamon, and we make it very sweet, and then we put marshmallows on top, and we stick it in the oven, and then we cook it. It's almost like a dessert, basically. It is a dessert. But you eat it with your food, and so you have a sweet, salty mix. It's lovely. I like sugar. But also, they have this sort of a saying that they always say, that turkey has tryptophan, they say. It's a chemical within the turkey meat, and it makes you sleepy. So it's a common tradition that after Thanksgiving you take a nap or you watch football. So football, American football, there's always a really big game on Thanksgiving Day. So usually when you eat on Thanksgiving, it's a late afternoon, so late lunch, kind of early dinner type thing. And then afterwards, you take a nap, or you take a walk, or you watch football, or some people play football. So it's a very eating and football day. And during the meal, it's a common tradition to have a time of prayer, or a time where you share what you are thankful for. And so it's always been a tradition wherever I have Thanksgiving that our family or friends, we go around in a big circle, which is the thankfulness circle, and we talk about what we're grateful for. So what we're thankful for this year, what has changed in our lives. Or it's easy to always focus on what is not good and hard, but there are so many things that we have that we take advantage of. And so this is a time to remember how great our lives are and how blessed we are, really, all the good things that we have. And then every year, the president pardons a turkey. I didn't know this was such a big deal until somebody recently told me about this. But apparently, every year the president chooses one turkey that gets to live. And so he has this big ceremony, and he comes up with the turkey, and he puts his hand on the turkey, and he pardons the turkey. He allows the turkey to live. And it's this big situation that the president does, a ceremony every year. So last Thursday was Thanksgiving, and I hope that you guys will also have a happy Thanksgiving, even if you don't celebrate. Maybe next year you can start a new tradition, and we can bring Thanksgiving to Hungary. So that's it. Thank you. Any questions? Questions? All right. Well, if you have any questions, feel free to come up to me. I'd love to talk with you. And hopefully you enjoyed this basic presentation on these holidays. Thank you. Thank you.